Welcome to the Pinter Beer Chef, a channel dedicated to the Pinter 3. Here you'll learn everything you need to know to brew like a pro. Okay, today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of cold crashing. Brewers can't seem to agree on much when it comes to brewing, to be honest, and with cold crashing it's no exception. But today we'll talk through the pros and cons and see what we can come up with. Just to clarify what we're talking about when we refer to cold crashing with the Pinter 3, all we're talking about is putting the Pinter 3 in your fridge with the docking station still on. So dropping the temperature but while it's still docked, as opposed to cold crashing straight into conditioning with putting the Pinter 3 in your fridge without the docking station. So when people refer to cold crashing with the Pinter 3, that's the differentiator here. They're just talking about whether the docking station is still connected or not. The first and most obvious consideration as to whether you cold crash or not is whether you've got the space to do it. If you've not got space to put a Pinter 3 with the docking station in the upright position into your fridge, then there's not a debate really. You're not going to be cold crashing anytime soon unless you want to go out and invest into a larger larder type fridge. That's going to cost you money. You're going to need additional space. It's going to be quite an investment, and you need to thoroughly think through the pros and cons of cold crashing before you make that financial investment to go into a bigger fridge and commit yourself to cold crashing moving forward. Before we consider whether to cold crash or not, we need to take into account what the effect of cold crashing actually is, how it affects our brew, and how we're going to benefit by putting our Pinter 3 into a couple of days of cold crashing before conditioning. Now, when you drop the temperature on a brew, you're going from room temperature, you drop it down to 2 or 3 degrees C in your fridge. Leaving the docking station on can be beneficial for clearing the beer. And the way it does this is the particulate matter, when it's reduced in temperature, will have a tendency to sink and make headway towards your docking station. And on top of that, what you'll find is that the yeast at a real cold temperature goes into pretty much a state of dormancy really, and it becomes inactive, and at that point it will start to clump together, and that clumped yeast matter will also sink clear from your beer and drop into your docking station. So when you put your vessel into a cold crash with the docking station on, the particulate matter, the clumped yeast, is going to sink to the bottom and give you the opportunity to get that out of your beer before you turn it into the horizontal position and finish it off the conditioning process. Bear in mind that if you take the docking station off after fermentation and put your vessel straight into the fridge for conditioning, you're still cold crashing. You're just cold crashing without the docking station on, because guess what's going to happen? Exactly the same thing. The particulates in your vessel now are going to make their way towards the bottom, as are the clusters of yeast. So the clarity in the beer is still going to be there, but the downside of not cold crashing is the sediment of that particulate matter dropping to the bottom of your vessel still remains now in your brew. Whereas if you cold crash in advance, you can flush that all into your docking station, detach it and take it away. Now, if like me, once you put your Pinter into your fridge for conditioning, you tap directly from the fridge. I never remove my Pinter from the fridge. Once it's in there and conditioned, I just tap straight from the fridge. My fridge has got the depth that I can apply the tap handle and it fits in the fridge nicely. I can tap straight from the fridge, so it's not an issue. I'm not going to be taking this out, moving it around every time I pour a beer to be agitating any sediment that might have settled in the bottom of the vessel. So for me, the clarity of the beer, you can see from my example on the screen now. This is just a random example of an in casa Mexican lager that I brewed. Now the clarity of this lager was fantastic. There was no cold crash involved at all. It just went straight into conditioning and the beer turned out absolutely fine. So clarity was not an issue. The difference really between whether you cold crash or not is the sediment that you're going to get at the end of your brew. You might find that when you get to your end of your brew, if you've not cold crashed, the last glass or half a glass has actually got quite a bit of sediment in it. So, I mean, I'll be honest, of the vast majority of brews that I've drank them dry, and I've not had any problem at all. But I have had one or two that the last glass, I've looked at it and thought, no, or the last half a glass, I'll pass on that. There's a bit too much sediment. Cold crashing would have protected me from that. It would have given me a clean drink, really, for the whole of the 10 pints that was in the vessel. So I think that's more the question of when you decide whether you want to commit to cold crashing or not. So for me, the consideration when it comes to cold crashing is, am I happy to accept a little bit of additional sediment in the bottom of my pinter after I've gone through a conditioning process, or do I want to invest in a bigger fridge that's capable of housing the Pinter 3 with the docking station on to try and clear some of that extra potential sediment before I put the pinter into the vertical position? So there aren't any cons to cold crashing if you've got the space to do it. It can improve the clarity of the beer and it can reduce the sediment in your vessel when you finish conditioning. So the question is that actually a big enough a problem that you want to actually invest in a bigger fridge, more space, more commitment to actually put your pinter in the upright position and cold crash and take the time and effort to add that extra step? Now, for me personally, the sediment that I get, the residual sediment in the vessel after conditioning, has never been a problem for me. It's not been a problem enough that to date I've been prepared to invest in a larder fridge or something bigger and more dedicated than what I've currently got. I like to use just the little glass front beer fridge, the mini fridge style, that I can pop my pinter in straight into conditioning, tap from that. 9 out of 10 brews, I'll drink them dry, no problem at all. If there's a little bit of sediment left at the bottom, it's not an issue. You know, we're brewing fresh here. It's what I would expect from a fresh home brew. So for me, it's not really a problem that has encouraged me to invest any further to resolve. But if you've got the space, then popping it into a cold crash for a day or two is going to do no harm whatsoever and would probably be recommended. You've got something to gain and nothing to lose. So like with most applications and ideas when it comes to brewing, I'd encourage you to make an informed decision based on results. If you've got satisfactory results and you're happy going straight into conditioning, then there's not a problem to solve. Carry on doing what you're doing and be happy with it. If you've got sediment, or if you're having to take your vessel out of the fridge every time that you pour a glass of beer, and that's agitating the sediment and making your beer extra cloudy, if it's an issue, then investigate further and maybe considering going into the cold crash and resolving the issue. So that's my recommendation. I like all my decisions to be informed and results driven. I like to keep the process as simple as possible and maximize the results. Until I've got a problem, I won't go ahead and fix it. Right now, I'm happy popping my pinters straight from fermentation into conditioning, and I'm not seeing anything that is encouraging me to invest any further. At some point in the future, if I invest in a larder style fridge because I want to keep more pinters, I want maybe 4, 5 or 6 in the fridge, at that point when I've got the space, would I consider a little bit of a cold crash for maybe a day or two? Yes, I would. I definitely would. I wouldn't rule it out. So it's not an issue either way. It's down to personal choice and what your expectation is of the result and how far you want to push it, how complicated you want to make the process, and how much money you want to invest into it. I hope you enjoyed your video today. If you'd like to join our Pinter community, like and subscribe and leave any comments below. Cheers.